Hi, I'm Constanze. I work at University of Marburg, and my PhD research centers around AI-driven sex robots. The myth that I'm talking about is what happens with AI in the bedroom stays in the bedroom. And this is a myth because AI-driven sex robots reproduce a highly gendered dimension of the public-private divide, which means that AI in the bedroom and what you do with it must always be political from a feminist perspective.
Thanks for tuning in and listening to this. I am Constanze Erhard. I am a research associate at Philipps University of Marburg in the Department of Sociology, and I am very grateful to be a part of this super important project and to be able to contribute to it with my presentation, in which I want to take a closer look on the following myth: what you do with AI in the bedroom is your own thing. This myth, I think, sums up a common concept, namely that the thinking that what happens in the bedroom is people's own business. The bedroom is generally considered to be one of the most private spaces in people's lives. So basically the sentence expresses the saying that what one does in private is generally not of interest to political questions. But what I would like to do in this talk is explain a few implications that this statement contains, especially when applied to AI in the private sphere. I start from the assumption that more and more AI systems are being introduced into the private sphere, and I would like to use the example of sex robotics to illustrate this and the implications of this. So, what kinds of questions do we need to ask when tackling this issue? First of all, I would like to ask, what do I even mean by AI in the bedroom? What is AI doing there? Second of all, what's happening in sex robotics with AI? That's the example that I want to use to illustrate the implications of having AI in more and more intimate spheres of your lives. Then you might say, that's a private thing. Why would you even consider it an issue that there's a sexual AI in the bedroom? And I would like to explain this with the framework of the public and private divide and how this relates to sex robots. And last but not least, the question of all questions: what is to be done? So let's start with the question, what is AI doing in the bedroom? So when I talk about AI in the bedroom, there might be many examples coming to your mind where AI is already in the home space. The most prominent examples might be smart home systems, where your car and your alarm and your security camera and your vacuum cleaner and your dishwasher and many other tools in your home are connected through a network, and you can steer them with a voice digital voice assistant. And this concept of the digital voice assistant is also underlying the idea of personal service assistants like Siri, Alexa, or Cortana. All of these assistants being made by different firms, but you can also use them, for example, to steer your smart home utilities. So these are maybe the most common and the most well-known concepts of AI in the home space, and maybe also the bedroom if you want to talk to Siri before going to sleep. But there's also the concept of personal companion systems, which also use AI. For example, educational robots. There's this storyteller robot with the name Cody, which has been developed for small children, and it is able to tell children stories, interact with them, and it is supposed to be really helpful in the development of small children. And if we want to take another look at systems that are being used for in different phases of your life, not just with small children, there are also chatbots that you can use through an app on your smartphone, like, for example, the chatbot Replica AI, which I have displayed here as an example. This is a chatbot specifically devised to provide care, emotional comfort, emotional support. Replica AI works in a way that it uses your own interaction patterns in the communication when you type the messages with other interactional patterns that have proven to be really helpful and emotionally relevant. And so basically it is kind of like you're chatting with a sociable part of yourself. And this AI companion is supposed to provide a certain kind of emotional support and help you through different phases. So this illustrates that, first of all, there's somehow a perceived need for emotional support and a perceived need of combating what you might call loneliness. And this means that emotionality and relationality, the way that AI is showing companionate and effective ways of behavior, and is being your best friend, basically, that these concepts of care and companionship are more and more being embedded in social robotics. So social robotics are trying to be more relational, especially in the private sphere, and making robots and AI generally more sociable, and so that they might be more accepted by people. It is important to call you into mind that all these programs are designed to learn from the user's habits and predict their behaviors. So they are really tailored to the needs of one person. And I think this is really important to bear in mind when we talk about social robotics. It is also important to remind you that these principles are increasingly adopted in sex robotics as well, which is why I want to use these as an example for what I want to discuss. So AI can be used specifically for sexual purposes. The most prominent example maybe is Harmony, the product of California-based tech company Realbotics, which is an AI-driven robotized sex doll. Harmony consists in one part of an AI system, Harmony AI, which you can see here, and Harmony X, a almost life-sized sex doll that is robotized in a way that it can move its head and upper body and move its eyes and talk. And the speaking module is connected to the AI system. So Harmony AI is able to interact with the user just in the way that Replica AI is able to interact with the user. And I would say that this ideal of companionship and unconditional love and emotional support that is being embodied in Harmony AI with Harmony X promises both a special fulfillment in terms of companionship and of sexuality. And this combination, I would say, is really kind of new, at least technologically speaking. And if we call into mind that these personal service robots have this specific kind of service orientation designed to help you in any situation and are modeled after an omnipresent secretary, this shows that maybe this perfect companion in the palm of your hands that Realbotics is advertising plays into this metaphysical ideal of the perfect woman, at least in patriarchal ideals. So it's basically kind of like this robotization of sex dolls is somehow a patriarchal dream come true. And this doesn't mean that this has to be like that, but at least I would say that it is important to identify these elements that could lead there. And I think that it is necessary to analyze this through the framework of the public-private divide. Ever since ancient Greece, there has been in philosophy, and especially political philosophy, the idea that there exists a dualism between the public and the private realm. This is especially prominent in Aristotle. Aristotle, but also other state philosophers of this time, have differentiated between public affairs, where politics take place, deliberation about political topics, and productive work, transcendence, progress. That's the realm of the active masculine principle. On the other side, the private domain is where family life takes place. This is where women, children, and slaves dwell, and where reproductive work is being done. So this is the feminized sphere, and reproductive work is a term that illustrates, in Marxist terms, because it is focused on the production and reproduction concept of providing the workforce. This concept of reproductive work shows that these tasks, just like cooking, mending, child rearing, cleaning, and providing sexual relief just as emotional support, that these tasks are being considered as care work and mostly unpaid work, since they are associated with affection and therefore are being legitimized as that they are being done out of love, and therefore they do not need remuneration. So this is a feminized social function that I would identify, and it is mirrored in expectations in gender roles until today, where women are being expected to be more relational, whereas men are expected to be more distanced. Of course, this is a real dualist concept, which I am not in support of, but this is still this public-private divide that constructs and helps reconstruct these gender roles again and again. And I would say that this private realm is at play in the conception of the sex robot Harmony, because Harmony and other sex robots that might be fashioned in a similar way than her embody this combination of sexuality and emotional care. And this combination is really specific of the private realm, as I have just explained. So the separation of public and private is being really foundational for the tasks and offers that Harmony can do. And therefore, Harmony reinforces this combination of sexuality and emotional care. And I would term the kind of work that she is able to do sexualized care work. Because somehow the care work that she is doing is being made more appealing by the fact that it comes packaged with sexuality. And what are we now to make of this? How could we answer to this problem? I would say that the feminist movement of the 1960s and 1970s provides one good answer to this problem. Maybe also different, but there's this slogan that I would argue is really pertinent to this problem and answers well to it. The slogan is, "The personal is political." This slogan means that there is no such thing as an apolitical private realm. It is important to note that experiences of people are always structured along social power relations, as long as social power relations exist, and gendered power relations are part of this. Therefore, experiences are structured along gender, and there are different experiences that men and women or other genders make. But the most important lesson to learn from this thing that the personal is political is that this separation of the public and the private gives us a thorough misconception of what politics might be. To think that being in the private realm, of being a housewife, for example, and therefore not participating in politics, gives us a totally wrong idea of what politics should be and can be. Everything is political, so also the private realm is political. And our private desires, practices, and expectations matter in that way because they structure and are again structured by these power relations that I have mentioned. They do not exist outside of a political or social sphere. So, to sum up, what is there to do? I would say that by analyzing the structural position of the sex robot, which means that it is a sex robot able to do sexualized care work generally associated to the feminized private realm, we can assess the social dynamics that make such sex robots seem plausible and necessary. I would argue that it is precisely this divide between the relational, emotionally saturated private realm and the emotionally cold and rational public realm that creates the need for such a sex robot. And the sex robot, again, through its being able with the AI to do sexualized care work, reinforces this foundational divide of public and private. And I think that this structural position needs to be analyzed and looked at closely. And this, I would say, requires the recognition of the personal as something political. Only if we recognize this, we can come to a critique of the deeply ingrained patriarchal and capitalist structures that shape our world of perception and our desires. So I would say that the first step consists in reflecting on the public-private divide and how it shows in our relations towards sexuality and the distribution of care. But of course it is necessary to note that thinking through these expectations and desires is not an individual, it cannot be an individual task, but it must be done collectively. Only by recognizing that these expectations, wishes, and desires that we carry towards sex robots and other kinds of AI technology, they are not simply given, but always historically and socially situated in the ways that we think about sexuality and care. And if we recognize that, we can finally reflect on ways of how to change the world. Thank you for your patience. And here are my sources and some literature for further reading. Thank you.